Welcome to the Clear the Shelf podcast with Chris and Chris, the show that meets at the intersection of education and entertainment to discuss online arbitrage, retail arbitrage, wholesale, and all facets of selling on Amazon. We'll bring you news, tactics, strategies, insights, stories, and interviews to help you grow your Amazon business. And now, here are your hosts, Chris Grant and Chris Rasick. What's up, Amazon sellers, and welcome back to the Clear the Shelf podcast with myself and my Philippendulous co-host, Chris Rasick. This week, we have a friend of the show back on, Saul, or as some of you may know him, at Saul Sells Stuff on Twitter. Today, we're going to be diving deep into Amazon to Amazon flips to try to help you and us, to be honest, become better sellers and add another tool to our toolkit. Now, before we dive in, you guys know the drill. It takes us minutes to prepare for this show. If you take something away from this episode, do us a solid, leave us a review or drop a comment to let us know how it was helpful. That digital handshake makes us want to keep coming back and bring you more interviews and education to make you a better seller. Saul, what's going on, man? I'm glad to have you back.
Thank you guys. Yeah, third time's the charm. It's good to see you.
Right? Absolutely. So, I mean, if people don't know, you are the king of Amazon to Amazon flips. And normally I'd ask you to set the table a little bit, but we've got some episodes in the catalog where they could go back and learn how you got into Amazon flips and things like that. But I do want to kind of set the table a little bit for the person who knows nothing. Like, what the heck is an Amazon to Amazon flip and why does it work?
Yeah, that's also very kind of you. I think you're the only, the only one that'll call me the king, but I'll wear it proudly for you. So Amazon to Amazon sounds funky to even people that sell on Amazon, but especially if you ever try to explain this to someone who doesn't sell online, because the whole notion is exactly what it sounds. We're buying products from Amazon, usually Amazon.com, but you can do this cross market, which we can get to, and you're selling it right back on Amazon. And from a element of environmentalism, it sounds rough. We're just moving the same product back and forth. But given the size of Amazon and all of the different holes in the organization, I mean, there's bound to be just too many things going on. There's just a tremendous arbitrage opportunity when you're looking at doing this for various reasons we can get into. But at its core, that's all it is just buying inventory from the left hand and selling it on the right hand, and it's part of the same body.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's funny, or we I don't know what the right answer is, but people think that's like too good to be true. Like, why would Amazon sell for
It
something
sounds
cheap?
lunatic.
You know, but it happens. It happens in every marketplace. I mean, there are people who do it on
Yeah.
Walmart. There are people who do it on Amazon. There are people who do it on eBay. Like, this is just arbitrage is just something that happens when there is a marketplace, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the weird part, when you look at eBay, I think that's kind of explained away. It's like, well, these are individual sellers and they may not know what they're doing. And when you look at Walmart and Amazon, you're like, well, that's one organization. So like, why would they possibly do this? But the reality is they have their own KPIs and they have their own issues that they have to solve internally. And sometimes those don't align with holding inventory for as long as they need to, or keeping it at the price they need to price it at. Whereas like we're all small businesses compared to Amazon, right? Like pretty much everyone in the world is a small business compared to Amazon. And so most of us all we care about is profit at the end of the day. Like, we need to sell something and profit off of it. We need the high revenue. We need that margin. And so we're less concerned. Now, sometimes we have space issues, but we're really less concerned with other elements that Amazon is more concerned with, which is like moving inventory between warehouses, which is competing for the dollar with other retailers because we're leveraging Amazon. We're actually, the fact that Amazon does drop the price enough to allow A2A is perfect for us because it just brings more customers to them, which only helps us as suppliers to those customers. But the reason they have to do that is because they have problems at their scale that we're just never going to have. And for that reason, the arbitrage opportunities just pop up. And of course, we get to take advantage of them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if you zoom out far enough, we're just exploiting inefficiencies in the market. So why wouldn't Amazon have them too? So yeah, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah,
Um,
our country.
right. Yeah, GDP and everything, right?
Yeah.
Now you've mentioned, I've heard you mention that there are over 500,000 profitable price drops on Amazon every single month, which maybe some of us need to take a second to actually absorb that number. How did you discover that number, and what does that actually mean for us executing on it?
Yes, I think that's actually an incredibly conservative number, when we look at slow months. So, we're in the middle of August right now, and this is being recorded. So we have these kind of like, Q2, Q3, a lot of people look at as like their slower quarters. You can still do very well, but they don't really compare to Q4, Q1. And it's not just us as sellers, it's also Amazon and other retailers. It's just the summer slowdown is a thing. So when you look at a random month in June or July, you may get, yeah, 500, 600,000 profitable price drops, but you go look at a month like November through February, and we're gonna see 900 to 1.1 million profitable price drops just because of how much more movement there's going to be in the market at that time. And I'm not capturing all of them when I say that either. I look at a very specific scope when I call about profitable price drops. These are products that I might be at least open to flipping and interested in based on certain metrics I've already predetermined. But there are other ones out there that you could buy and hold for 7 months. I'm not really counting those. The ones I'm counting are actually profitable today, compared to the 30 or 90-day average. They're not including bundles. They're not including holds. They're purely like almost quick flips, if you will. And how we're getting the number is, over the years, and we're going to get to it in this call. We've developed software to help us find A2A flips. And when you do that, you get a lot of data in the process. And so one of the data points you get is like, well, how many leads are we finding? What is this system finding? And we're using different elements. We're using, sometimes we're using Keepa, which we'll get to. Sometimes we're using Amazon themselves. They have a lot of endpoints, an API that you can leverage. Oftentimes we're scraping and monitoring our own products that we chose, that we kind of choose to tell the system to look at. And across that board, that's how we're kind of getting to that number. We're saying, hey, in a given day, we're seeing 20 to 30,000 items that kind of meet this criteria, which to me is, under about 2 million rank, or no rank, at least a penny profitable when you take the current price, compare it to the 30-day price. So we're not even talking about 90-day prices or anything like that. I'm saying, hey, what's the average 30-day new price? What's that lowest average price 30 days? What is the price today? After fees and everything, if I sold it at that 30-day average, can I make money? If the answer is yes, it goes in that pile. And so that's how we're getting that number, which is a very large number. And I do want to put a caveat to that number too, which is, sometimes you'll get private label products in there. You'll get products that you wouldn't really want to flip. That's just kind of the nature of Amazon. But hundreds of thousands of products that you all have heard of, brands, or maybe brands you haven't heard of though, but like are very arbitrageable, if that's a word. Very, very good products that people at OA and RA would still be interested in. Brands that you probably have in your house. They just actively recycle every day in and out across different categories.
Mm-hmm. You'll get private label products that you wouldn't even want to private label. So that's
oh yeah,
it's a separate conversation. So, Saul, is it fair to say that is there a season, and does it follow like the retail sales? Like if there's a big sale or a big, obviously Q4 is ramped up. Does that also mean that it's a bigger opportunity for A to A flips?
Um, yeah, I think it's going to depend how we define the word opportunity. I think pure volume, yes. The more sales that other retailers are running, so the more times Macy's and Kohl's and Target and Walmart are trying to capture a customer, the more aggressive Amazon's going to be, either with matching those sales or trying to do something new to get that attention. The more often uh, products are coming in and out of cycles, so it's like toys that are left over from Q4, or toys that are sitting on the shelf in Q3 that they need to make room for. Like all of those things are going to create a demand for arbitrage. But I get the question pretty often also, which is like, is it ignorable? Like, should I not even look at A2A outside of certain times of the year? And the reality is like, I don't ever stop. And the people that I work with and try to help them see that vision, once they get them to click, they never stop. There is a huge opportunity all year round. there will be more opportunity in certain quarters, but that's just the reality of retail and what we get to do. And also, we're going to run out of money. So I think, during the slower quarters, the ones that only have 600,000 price drops profitably a month, no, those can still be incredibly profitable because, those types of flips are maybe less time sensitive too. You're not worried as much about getting in and out because it's a Q4 specific product or things of that nature. So yeah, you can certainly spend more during certain times of the month or year, but there's no time what I would say cool off. Don't even look at it. It's not worth your time.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's good to know that I really started taking flips seriously during the slowest time of the year.
Yeah, I mean that's good. You're doing your homework, right? Like you're ready
Right,
now.
right. So one of the things that I've, people in this business, they want to scale. Like everyone brings that up. I want to get to X amount of dollars per month. So,
Yeah.
and you mentioned, that you'll run out of money. How much scale is there in Amazon to Amazon flips?
So I think we could have a whole different podcast just on scale. I think it's really gonna depend on the seller and what scale means to them and the resources they have available to them outside of just money. Because when you're talking about more money, you're talking about more problems. And those problems usually come up with space and time. And so could you spend $100,000 a month in spend on A2A? And the answer is yes. There are people that do that every month. Sometimes even replens can generate 30 or 40,000 in spend just in A2A replens, which is a whole different thing that we can talk about. But I think what happens is a lot of times you can spend. I would argue you can spend more than that. Granted, could you spend $1 million a month? I think you could. I think it would be really challenging. I also think that would be an operation that is not something that I have experienced. I don't know if I would ever encourage someone to like, hey, your life mission should be to spend $1 million a month A2A. But I think that you can certainly spend 100 if 150 if you want. Most people end up closer to like that 30 to 60 range when they talk about kind of scale. But in those cases though, you're going to be talking about having a warehouse. You're going to be talking about like not just buying quick flips. You're going to be wanting to leverage all different types of A2A. And those massive ones we talked about are going to be holds and seasonality and discontinuation and all the different things that you would also do for OA and RA come into play for A2A. And so if you really take all that into account, then yeah, certainly like there's specific SKUs you could buy $100,000 of if you're willing to sit on them for 4 months. But most people can't. So I think when people ask the word scale to you and me and Chris, like to all, like I think when we get asked what is scale on Twitter, I think what people really mean is like, how do I scale really fast, but be a nomad? Like, how do I like spend a lot of money but don't have to hold it and just send it to a prep center and just like churn it really, really quickly for like 10% margins, which tends to be kind of what their goal is. And I think you can comfortably do like in like that 70 to 100,000 range in those quick flips during like the high seasons. And I think in the summer you're probably going to be closer to like the 50 to 80 if you're just looking to like get in and get out. But again, if you kind of implore all of it, you could certainly raise that. And I also maybe limiting beliefs, right? Just because I haven't seen someone do a million doesn't mean there are killers out there like that aren't doing $1 million a month in A2A alone. But from my experience, 6 years talking to lots and lots of sellers and helping them and networking with other A2A sellers, I think the big ones that I've seen are usually in that 100 to 200 range a month. And then the average seller that is considered big is probably closer to 30 to 60. And then the newer seller tends to get stuck around 10 until they kind of unlock their mind a little bit about like how A2A differs from OA and RA.
And let's talk about margin a little bit. Like what is a healthy or a good margin when it comes to an 808 flip or an 808 flip business?
Also another like really hard biased one, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think A2A is the closest thing to RA without leaving your house. And I say that because we all know that retail arbitrage is likely going to win the battle of margin purely on just the fact that you have to put more time and energy. You can get deals that others can't. It's a lot of relationship building. And so a really good retail arbitrage business is going to be in the 20s, right? Like I think margin is going to be big pre returns. Like they're kind of live in the 20s somewhere, and then they might end up in the low 20s, high teens at scale. And again, scale is also a factor here, right? Like if you're going to spend $5,000 a month, you could cherry pick. You could end up with a 30% margin business. But if you're going to spend $50,000 a month, you really aren't going to have as much of that flexibility. So I I believe everyone should be able to land in the mid-teens with margin, without, unless they're spending 100K a month. I usually look at like a healthy business in the A2A space at like somewhere in like the 14 to 16%. Um, and this is after, refunds. So usually in the closer to 18, 19 before. I get some heat on Twitter when we talk about margin, because I do think a lot of folks are really more in like the 8 to 12. And I would gather a lot of people are lower margin than they think. They just
Mm-hmm.
don't maybe understand their numbers quite well enough yet to do that. Uh, so it's difficult. A lot of people only source really high volume products. Even when they do A2A, I have to untrain their brains. They're only buying products that they can sell 1,000 a month of. And I think the higher volume products you get, generally the lower margin you're going to end up with. Not always, but it is a bit of a trade-off you often end up getting. And so in those cases, they will probably gravitate closer to like that 10% margin. But if you buy the products that you only sell 5 of a month, but you get great profit on and you have higher margin on, and you build a portfolio of 20 of those, so you're selling 100 of these products a month, but you're making $80 a product, and then you're making $4,000 a month. I mean, you can end up with 25% margin. So um, it's a weird non-answer that I'm giving you. I think it's really going to depend on how they want to run their model. Um, I really try to get people when they talk about A2A and they source to ignore volume as much as possible. As far as it relates to like the volume of that SKU, and more focus on the volume of that they can sell in that given month. And then the margin and ROI reflected on that. So even if it's one, Chris, I know I shared a lead with you like last month. I only bought one of them. I think maybe only bought one of them too. But if when we sell that one, we're going to make hundreds of dollars. And
I did
if I
make hundreds of
purchased,
dollars.
so like, and in fairness, like let's say we made $400 on that one product. We sell one a month at $400, and then we have another SKU that we can sell 50 of a month or 60 of a month. Great, but like most of the time we're only going to make, let's say, $7 a profit. Now, if I make $7 a profit, I'd have to sell like 60 something of those to make the same as that one sale. And so I think that's when you like start looking at it that way. It's like how much money can I make per SKU as opposed to how much volume can I make per SKU. Margin gets better because you're more comfortable buying products that don't sell as often, but you make the same amount of money. So I don't know, that was a really roundabout answer, but I do think that if you are open your brain kind of to like the generalized model, you should be in the mid-teens. If you focus on high volume, you're probably going to be closer to low teens, tens. And then if you were like really picky and you're like, I just want to make 3 to 5K a month, you could arguably be in like the mid-20s. Uh, um, just choosing your SKUs a bit more carefully.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting. You
Yeah.
threw some numbers out there that probably need to marinate on a little bit. It's interesting that you said spending around 10,000, 10 to 20, I think you said, before it actually unlocks for you. That's probably $250,000 in a year in Amazon to Amazon flips, and you haven't even figured it out yet. So
Thank you for listening to the Clear the Shelf podcast. My magnanimous co-host Chris Rasick has put together a gift for you for being a listener. It's called the Monthly Goal Tracking Spreadsheet, and it's free. The spreadsheet will help you break down and track how much you've purchased, which should be a leading indicator of how much you will sell, and then you'll be able to track how much you've sold as well as your estimated monthly profit on a daily basis. This will all feed into the daily averages so you can ensure that you're on track to meet your goals each and every month. Grab it for free today over at cleartheshelf.com/goal-tracking. Thanks again for being a listener. Now back to the show.
Really interesting to kind of project these numbers out. So I'm curious, with that kind of spend, with that kind of volume, and those margins, what does your typical day look like? Because you have other businesses as well.
Yeah.
But yet you manage to spend, $25,000-$30,000 a month on Amazon flips, all while juggling multiple companies. How do you make that work? How do you find time to purchase that much inventory?
Yeah. Happy to talk about that. And I do think it's important to kind of note that there are lots of things that I do. And also as a factor to when people are listening to this episode or just getting into Amazon in general, like you don't have to go all in. It's okay to do a number of different things depending on your personality type. So thinking back, so July I spent, I think I tweeted actually, my like credit card numbers. I think it was like 40 something thousand, like 44,000 in A2A spend in July. Um, on the like the one credit card. I'll probably average closer to like that 40, and then kind of get into these like bigger months. It'll be closer to like maybe 70 to 80. As I said, like there are people that certainly do 100 plus. I'd never go out there and say like I'm the number one A2A spender in the world, but I just have been doing it a long time, and I try to help you spend more than me. That's my goal. Like I want you to be whatever you want to be, and if that's spending $5 million, I'm going to try to help you do that. Um, and the reason I don't spend more is arguably because of the other businesses. So the real trick, and the one that I talk about and people roll their eyes on, is like I do all my sourcing from my phone, which is whatever, which is like I know a big like I had people argue with me the other day on Twitter, calling me like just a liar, just like straight up like, yeah, okay. Um, I you guys know obviously like Joe Hart, I think he's a friend of the pod as well. Like he messaged me like I recorded a video of me sourcing mobile to send to him so that he could like, because he wanted to kind of start doing it more. And I've had people visit my house. I've had friends who I met through Amazon come hang out with me, and I sit down, I show them, and now they source on their phone. And I don't think it's as complicated as it's made out to be. It's just really tricky when you're only doing it from your computer for so long, and then you try to transition. I will not sit here and tell you phone is better than computer. I think just phone allows me to do it on the move, which is how I can then do it while doing other things. So the upside to A2A is there is a substantially less research that goes in on the front end. So when you're doing RAOA, you're finding a product that is on sale, or you're finding a product that looks interesting. That's the first battle. It's like, all right, I found a product. But the whole second stage of an RAOA flip is like, all right, is this product on Amazon? Can I find this product on Keepa? What does the data suggest? Is the product correctly branded? Is like all these kind of check boxes to make sure that this is a product that is worth buying. Most of that's done at A2A, which is like why I fell in love with A2A to begin with in 2018, because we have the king of OA here in Chris Grant. I sucked at general OA. Like I wanted to rip my hair out looking at websites, and part of that was because I couldn't stand like looking through hundreds of products and only finding a fraction of them on Amazon, and then of that fraction only some being profitable. And it was just like, I know type of arbitrage on things existed, but I was like, this is just not for me. And whereas like when I started looking at the A2A, the upside was, well, all the data's there. I'm finding the product on Amazon. So like I know it's on Amazon. I know the Keepa chart's there. I have all this information. Now it's really more assessing like the risk factors, assessing like understanding the market, and can I buy it? And then when I reverse source it to try to find it OA, I don't even have to think. I just have to find it. And so what allows me to source so effectively is because I only have to glance at a Keepa chart now and make a buying decision. And with the tools that we've built, that's even easier because the leads come to me. But even if you're just using Keepa, you can do the same thing. It's just it's repetition. I've looked at tens of thousands of products. I understand what makes up a good A2A flip now, or what I'm looking for in an A2A. And within about 10 seconds of looking at that 90 and 365, I'll click purchase. And so I can make, 8 purchases in 5 minutes, and then go about my day. Or I can, pop in and look at, when I have a free time. Maybe I'm dropping my son off at my mother-in-law's. I sit in the car way too often. I'll sit in the car for 10 minutes on the driveway because that's what we do as people. And I'll just open up my phone and I'll be like, oh, what's available right now? And I'll make a couple purchases. And so if you look at my purchase, and sometimes I throw it on Twitter, if you kind of look at my purchase throughout the day, they're clustered. I'll have like 4 at 7 a.m., 2 at noon, and like 3 at 5. And it's like you can tell when I went and looked, because like that's like the time I was looking for leads, or maybe something pinged at me, as opposed to like I maybe don't do it the way most people would need to, but I don't generally carve out specific time in my day to sit down and source. I tend to do it around my other schedule, or when the lead comes and finds me and I can click purchase and buy it. So that's, again, I'm giving you really long answers, but hopefully that's kind of explains how it all works for me.
Yeah. So you've gotten this down to be able to make a decision in 10 seconds. And the thing about flips is, I don't know, it sort of breaks people's brains sometimes, because they're like, well, tanking prices is bad. And that's literally what you're looking for. You're looking for where the price has tanked and you're going to buy it there. And then the goal is for that price to come back up. So like, what is the anatomy of a great Amazon to Amazon flip? Like, what's that perfect chart look like that I just hit buy before even thinking about it?
We have 15 hours. I think like, so for those that can't, that don't know, I'm like on the tail end of a cold or a virus, some kind of flu. This question's given me life though. Like I love, like, so I think that this this question or this type of conversation here is how you get past the 5 to 10K barrier. Because I think what happens is when most people that start A2A don't start their very first model of A2A. They usually have learned OA and RA first. And so they're bringing that knowledge with them, and that knowledge will get them to spend 5 to 10,000, because there are certain KPI charts, certain things that they've learned, they just translate. But then there's this gap of strategy that doesn't exist yet for them, or almost has to be undone, because there's some things that you don't touch in OA that you do touch in A2A. And I think this is kind of where it is, where like there is really no one answer here. There are sections of different flips. And I've talked over the years about the 5 pillars of A2A, which is like the quick flips, right? Like you buy it today, it's you're reacting, the reactive flips, the proactive flips. We're doing research ahead of time. We're kind of like setting our things, that we have the debundles, we have the holds. And I think what makes an A2A flip interesting is that you're less concerned about the source of the flip. I think that's why when you're talking about, and I say that with caveat, but when we talk about OA and RA, we talk about tanking products. If you go buy something from Walmart that's on clearance, the inevitability it tanks is higher than if you're manufacturing a sale, right, at some like niche mom and pop shop that you went to. And the reason for that is because like everyone in the world that has a Walmart may have access to that clearance deal, and that's a low hanging fruit for them. What's cool about A2A is it's a huge platform, but most of the leads you buy are actually more the mom and pop style flips, where you're not as concerned about the tanking. Now, I say this with the US and market in mind. There may be listeners on here that are in the UK or in Canada. The A2A flip section there is vastly different, purely because of volume. More things tank in the UK and Canada because there are fewer flips and there are more buyers, and there's just less volume per flip. And so some of the worst A2A charts I've seen are usually out of those markets. In the US, we're talking about 10 to 20 times more volume, substantially more flips. It's just less common for that to occur. So when we're seeing something where a price is just dropping all of a sudden, and it's normally a $100 product that's now $30, and you're like, oh, this is a great deal. Again, if you find that at Walmart clearance, you might be competing with 50 other sellers who all bought 10, and that's 500 units that are going to get run up into Amazon, which is a year's worth of supply. Where on Amazon, number one, maybe there's a quantity limit, which some people hate but works to our benefit. So quantity limits are like you can only buy so many, and so maybe they can only buy 3. And so for that reason, it spreads out like the tanking nature, which sounds funny, but like if some one person bought 50, they could hold the price low. Instead, it kind of separates it and forces that to go to 10 people or 12 people. And also it kind of deters other folks. They don't want to buy 3. It's not worth their time. So they don't even buy it at all, which is good for us. But when we buy that product for $30 and maybe they only have 10 in stock, the reality is like, as long as we've done a little bit of research to understand why the price went to 30, I think that's the next stage of like the evolution of strategy for an A2A buyer. It's like, why did this happen? If it happened because the product got discontinued, if it happened because the retail price dropped, maybe MSRP is no longer $100, maybe it's a $50 product now. Maybe there's a new version that came out. If we can find the reason, then we can understand if it's a good buy. And if there's no obvious reason for a price drop, it's generally worth testing. And that's where you kind of make those kind of quick decisions. And so you quickly Google the product, you see what other retailers are selling it for. If not every other retailer is at $30, we're going to buy it because we are confident that the price is going to go back up to $100 or close to it, especially if there's a history on that chart. Oftentimes Amazon will have a history of dropping price. It'll be 100 to 30 and 100 to 30 and 100 to 30, and it'll have these like caverns, and that scares people too. But if Amazon has shown me a clear track record of price fluctuations, then it's just a matter of time until it goes back up. And so I'm going to buy that product and flip it back. And this isn't necessarily the anatomy of a great flip. This is anatomy of a flip, and a flip that you can buy 10 times a day to make you money that people skip. Anatomy of a great flip, like a no-brainer, don't even have to question it. Those are more of like your hype reactive flips. Those are more of like, hey, a product is normally $50 or $100. Amazon just cannot stay in stock. So the market has shifted to $200 because that's what people are willing to pay, and they restock. If they restock at $50, you're going to buy it all day. You don't even have to question why. And you can spend $5,000 to $10,000 a month on those, but they're not going to make you an entire business where you can spend $1 million a year because there's just not enough of them. And again, those ones you're competing with everyone. Like everyone wants those. And so you have to be faster. You have to have some monitor systems. You just have to be like, again, more reactive. Whereas you can spend tens of thousands of dollars on these more like proactive or interesting charts that people skip on, where you can actually make more margin, have no competition. And I would consider those to me are a great flip, but really difficult to explain on an hour and a half podcast. But I have provided some examples on Twitter and things. But that's the switch. That's the click. That's how I get people to say, "Oh crap, okay, yes, I'm going to start buying more because these charts actually make sense to me now. I'm buying with less fear." And again, we don't have to win every time, but we win the majority of the time, and then we obviously take home the profit.
Yeah, that's it's worth mentioning again if you're not following at Saul Sells on Twitter. It's one of my favorite follows. You really should. So Saul, you've alluded to some of the mistakes. I especially like the OA RA seller brain transitioning into A to A because it's the concept is so tempting. So what are some of the most common mistakes? What if I'm putting a Post-it note up trying to reframe my OA brain, what does that Post-it note on my computer monitor say as far as mistakes to avoid?
I mean, I think there are going to be some buying mistakes and there are going to be some strategy mistakes. And I think the strategy mistake we kind of talked about, and you may not, I mean, actually, I'm pretty confident you wouldn't have to write this down, but I think most folks that we see that transition do have to untrain this. And that's just because, again, they kind of learn from each other, right? So it's, and it makes sense. They are only looking for the high volume, high aggressive, sell through 1,000 low rank flips. And if you're only looking for products under 100,000 rank that sell 100 to 500 times a month or more, your pool of potential products has shrunk from that 500,000 number to 20,000, right? Still a lot, but we're talking like 5%. And then you're now competing with everyone else and you have more tankers, and it's just like way more difficult for you to find consistent success. Because our goal is to create momentum, right? Like create win after win after win. Have the small wins add up to big profits. And so I think, again, not a problem that you're going to have, but for most people, what I need them to do is destroy any framework of rank at all altogether. I don't want you to look at sales rank whatsoever. I want you to look at it when you see a flip. I don't want you to filter by it. I don't want you to like say, I'm only going to look at products under a certain rank. I want you to look at all products. And I don't want you to look at products that only sell X number of times a month. Every single product has a story. Every product is a reason that the rank is high. There's a reason it doesn't sell a lot. And sometimes we can reverse that trend. Some of my favorites are like when you show people the examples, they're like, well, this product has 800,000 sales rank and it doesn't sell at all. And it's like, well, if you look at it, it's a $100 product, but in the last 6 months, there's been one seller on and off, so it's been out of stock half the time, and they're trying to sell it for $250. Well, I mean, maybe that's why it's not selling, but you could buy it for $40. So it's like, buy it for $40, sell it for $100. You're still making close to 100% return. You don't need to sell for 250. It's not going to sell for 250, but the history would suggest it'll sell for 100. And as soon as we list it for 100, we sell 5 in a week. And that's because that keeper chart was telling us a story. And so that isn't specific to A2A, but I think oftentimes I'm the one kind of retraining their brain to look at that. So getting that out of their way. Number 2 is ignoring this idea that you can't compete with Amazon, or ignoring this idea that the box statistics are important, which we don't. I think we got into this whole tangent last podcast I was on, but like we don't have to get into like that whole semantics of the buy box percentages. But just know I don't look at them. Jeff, big friend of the podcast, doesn't look at them. The large sellers that people listening to this know of, like they don't look at the buy box percentage. It's a flawed statistic. I want you to instead, look at other stats, look at other things in Keepa. And one of the things that you, of course, can look at is Amazon selling the product, but just because they are doesn't mean you have to ignore it. Amazon will share the buy box with you. They might not share it as aggressively as another third-party seller, might not get rotated in as fast, but you will get rotated in. And if you ignore products that Amazon's selling, again, you cut out more than half of these products that we talk about. And I think another thing I've shared on my Twitter is I'll share a breakdown of my products and how many I'm competing with. And I think something like 65% of my products Amazon's on. And of course I still sell them because, Amazon isn't always the fastest shipper. They're not always the best price. They're not always available in that local place. There's so many reasons Amazon might not be able to get it to the customer. So that's another thing. Let's remove that. You've already opened up a whole world. And so it's like these little tiny changes that, I help reconnect for people's brains. And then it's actually looking at the charts themselves. We talked about that already, right? It's like looking at a chart and understanding that, what the last 30, 90 days are important, but the last year or 2 years are more important. And like a history of how Amazon's reacted is more important than just how they're doing it right now, what's happening this second. We talked about the tank. It's like sometimes buying the pinch, which is like the lowest possible price and the highest seller count. Sometimes buying that is actually the place you want to be, because now we're going to talk about holds. Like we want to hold the product for 3 months and we can wait them all out. I mean, and Joe, you had Zach on the podcast, like, right? Zach's at those. So you kind of take the strategies of all the people that we know that are on podcasts for a reason, because they know what they're talking about, and you kind of just slowly employ all those little tidbits into your sourcing, and suddenly you go from 5 to 10 to 50 to $100,000, and you run out of money. You're like, oh my god, like now I start seeing opportunity everywhere. And then the last one is Google everything. If I had a slogan that is in my tombstone, it's probably Google everything, because it's reversing the OA-RA approach. When we're doing OA-RA, we Google, or we look to find it on Amazon. Well, we know that Amazon for A2A oftentimes is lowering their price to get you to buy on Amazon to avoid you going to another retailer. Well, we want to find that other retailer. And so, yeah, maybe you can only spend $5,000 in A2A. Maybe that's just where your limit is and how you're sourcing. But I bet you if you Googled everything you purchased in the 5,000, you'd find that same product somewhere else that you could buy more of. And so even if there's only 1 in stock or 3 in stock on Amazon dropped the price for a reason. So let's go find it. Let's go source more there. So that's a very short hit list. But if we kind of like slowly correct those things, we gotta open up the eyes. And it's a cool process. It doesn't happen fast though. I will say, like, I can make content all day, and I've made hours and hours and hours of content over the years on this, and I've done one-on-one calls, and I've done supports, and I've answered DMs, but it really doesn't click until people start doing it themselves, and they don't really do it enough for it takes 3 months, 2-3 months of little wins to be like, okay, this worked. All right, let me try something else. Let me expand on that, which is totally fair. But I would say don't go into A2A assuming oh my God, Saul said I could spend $100,000 a month and get 20% margins. Why is that not happening in the first week? I'm like, well, you wouldn't start, when you start RA, I did RA for 2 years hardcore. I was driving around 8 hours a day. I scanned thousands of products in Walmart to find 5. Sometimes you got to put in, you got to look at it and understand. And we're here to cut through a lot of that time, but it's not just going to immediately click strategy wise where you can take 10 seconds, look at it, keep and click purchase. We're going to get you there. But that's the goal. That was a lot.
Perfect.
Like,
Like any good SaaS founder, you built the software in Flip Alert to kind of scratch your own itch and solve your own problems.
Yeah.
Can you tell us, what does Flip Alert solve for those who want to do Amazon to Amazon flips?
So Flip Alert, there's like a little like history briefly, right? So Flip Alert came out of almost like a version 2 of the original software we built. So originally built software in 2021 because I was getting tired of, I had some replens, I had some restocks that I was actively doing A2A for, but I was getting tired of how Keepa handled tracking, right? It was like, it was a little bit slow and it reset only once a day. And there was like there was a limit and there was lots of things that it was not meeting up to my needs. And so 2021, I built just like a really small tool, although back at the time it was so much money because AI wasn't really a thing. You could probably build it today for like 10% of what we paid, but built this tool specifically for monitoring and tracking replens and restocks for my own business, and kind of gave access to our group, which is called the Buy Box. And it just lived like that for 3 years. It was just like, hey, this tool exists. It tracks this. It just tells you when things are back in stock or price has dropped. But we're doing it. We're not relying on anyone else. We're not relying on Keepa or any endpoints. We're doing it ourselves. And then in 2024, I met a developer who had built a like an interesting tool for another market that I have been fiddling around in my head for a long time to like take this 2021 product to the next level. And the next level of that for me was not only to tell me when products that I wanted to replan and restock came back, but like new products that I didn't know of yet. Like how do we source new leads for A2A? And up until that point, I was entirely using Keepa, and I love Keepa. It's the best $20 you can spend ever. And if you go again back to my Twitter, my pinned tweet is literally how to do A2A flips using Keepa. Like I walk you through it. But um, Keepa has its own problems, and so Flip Alert is that. So Flip Alert is actually the next transition from like, all right, it's an all-in-one tool, covers all A2A, and it's a product that allows me to set very specific filters that no other product can do. Unfortunately, Keepa can't do, and say, hey, I want to see price drops. I want to see leads, the A2A, that have X number of sellers, that have X profit and ROI, that are under a certain rank, that don't have like very specific variables when it comes to price over a period of time. That have like even no rank products, which are kind of tricky to get. All these like different like very specific tweaks that I can make that are very like just like, oh, it has this keyword title or this brand or isn't this brand, and I want to be able to filter them automatically. So I set this filter up, and then as it finds leads, it just shows me exactly what I want. I don't have to fiddle with private label products that accidentally come in. I don't have to see products I can't sell. I don't have to like any of that. And so at its core, Flip Alert solves two major problems. It solves that. So I set a filter set, and then I just get fed leads that are essentially pre-validated by my filters. And so that's how I can daily take 10 seconds because it's already made sure that there's at least these things are true before it even shows it to me. It also does the restocks. So I can say, hey, I am buying this product randomly restocks from Amazon or randomly price drops. I want you to monitor this particular ASIN, and I want you to tell me the second it changes. And so we do that too, both on stock but also on price. And we are, I always hate to, again, I love Keepa. We are substantially faster than Keepa because of just like Keepa's the beast, right? Keepa's just so big, they can't do everything perfect. We are smaller, we're nimble, we can. And the thing that we do really well is that. So we'll catch products that Keepa just never sees, just the way that Keepa functions. And so I will buy products, but a good 30% of my spend now is products that I'm monitoring for restocks that I get pinged when they restock that I wouldn't have gotten from Keepa Deals or from Keepa Tracker. And then the 70% are, yes, leads that come in that can just meet my criteria that it tells me. And so that's how most people use it. We built in some other things to make life easier, like order tracking. Amazon doesn't do a great job when it comes to order tracking. So if you're an A2A buyer, you're going to run into problems with understanding where your orders are, if they were delivered, where you get them shipped to your prep center, to yourself, what credit card you used, what account you used. Like all of the things can be really hard because Amazon just gives you one giant list. They don't really let you like filter. They don't like do a great job. And so we built the ability for you to do all of that as well. And then we built in some cool Walmart stuff because Walmart is, having a moment, good and bad right now. And there are still lots of opportunity at Walmart. And I don't do a lot at Walmart. I'll be the first. I do about $10,000 a month at Walmart. It's not a lot. It's all A2W for the most part. I do a little RA, but it's almost all A2W. And so when a new product comes into Flip Alert, we'll also try to UPC match it to Walmart. And so if we can find it on a Walmart, we'll tell you the Walmart price, and we'll give you the exact link to that product. So for the folks that do Walmart, we have a couple that just use it for Walmart. But that is substantially cut down on time. I think it's time and more profit. It's given me products that I wouldn't have been able to find on Keepa, so that's profit. But it's also saving me I don't know how many hours of sifting because there's just filters that I can't get anywhere else. So I don't have to look through, private label or products I can't sell or things like that. And I just see the products I want to see, and I can kind of tweak things live. And again, it's very mobile optimized. So that's how I source 99% of my leads from my phone from Flip Alert. So this isn't a Flip Alert ad, and no one on this call should feel like Flip Alert is a necessity if they want to. Like, oh my God, the only way to be successful in A2A is to use Flip Alert. But Flip Alert was built on the back of 8 years of experience with me and others spending millions of dollars in A2A and fulfilling our needs. So I am a founder and a user, and I wouldn't build something I wouldn't use. So I think if you're looking to, again, cut down on time or spend more money, Flip Alert's awesome. It's going to absolutely do that for you. Also, what's cool is we have a community, we have a Discord. So like when people join Flip Alert, they get access to our Discord. It's literally 400, 500 other A2A sellers. Like I don't know if there's any other place that has that many just A2A sellers in one spot. And they are so kind. Like if you add we have a whole section for lead analysis. So like if you're probably not going to buy something, but you just want to throw a lead up, like, hey, what do you guys think of this? They'll give you like their full on opinion, no holds, and then people kind of form little groups and they'll like buy out leads together, which is a huge strategy when it comes to A2A. I'm really proud of kind of that curated what we've built over there for the community. Other folks that even have their own A2A course, if you will, or like trainings, mentorships, they're in Flip Alert and they help our community. There is no there's no hardcore competition here that we all hate each other. It's like more than enough opportunity. So that's where I'll end of it. I think it's pretty great.
How many people after listening to this episode are going to open up Replit and say, clone Flip Alert, make no mistakes? Yeah,
go for it. I mean, I think that we know some folks that, so Keepa has an API, right? And so there's definitely people out there that build kind of their own in-house A2A thing. And that can already be helpful. Unfortunately, Keepa is not cheap. So you do have to spend quite a bit of money on the tokens for the API. But yeah, I mean, by all means, if you want to go for it, you should do that. I think, our secret sauce is we use AI on top of having 3 full-time great developers that took 6 months plus to build and continues to tweak. So I think you can do something cool. I don't think it'll be I'm not when I say I'm not worried, it's not because I don't think you guys can do it that are listening. It's just I never really see anyone as competition because I don't think we're competing. So I think you can go build it. I think Flip Alert's gonna hang out too. We're gonna be more the merrier. But you should check out Flip Alert if you don't want to build your own thing. I think it's it's already here and it's pretty affordable.
Hey, so one of the tactics or one of the strategies that produces the most saliva in my mouth is debundling. Can you talk about debundling as a strategy and kind of walk us through as specific as an example as you can of how to turn 10 into 70 or more or something like that?
Yeah, I think debundling is one of those areas that Keepa is still best in class. We're working on it. That's when I said I use Flip Alert for 99%. You can do some debundling in Flip Alert, hands down, but I think we're not quite. Keepa still has a leg on us there, and that's the 1% I use Keepa for. And debundling is also pretty straightforward, right? It's It's the concept that Amazon is selling multi-packs. They're selling, like I have this plastic Kleenex here in front of me. Some of you, can be, it's obvious why, but they're selling Kleenex, right? So yeah, if you go to Target, Kleenex will be sold sometimes in like 3 packs. So it's like 3 of them, and they're all like bundled together with their own UPC. And so we would consider that one unit. And I also want to preface what debundling is. I would never take that 3-pack, break it up, and sell individual boxes. This is not a debundle because this is already open now, right? This is, even if it had the thing here, this is open. It's not wrapped in plastic. It doesn't have a UPC on it. What I think when I think of debundling is we're buying products that you can break down. Those individual things we're breaking them down into have their own UPCs still on the package somewhere, right? We're not throwing them in a Ziploc bag. And I think it's important. But Kleenex does have 3 packs. So let's have a 3-pack. And let's say we went and we bought a 12-pack from Amazon, and it arrived to us, and it was 4 3-packs. So they were like, in the big box, they just gave us 4, but of these 3. So we have essentially 4 different units. Those units all have their own UPC. That is a debundle. We would then take that and sell those individual units on their own ASIN and profit on the difference. And the reason that we can often profit is twofold. Number one, oftentimes brands will just sell products cheaper in bulk. That's the value that we get as a consumer. Number two, consumers are lazy. And I say that as a lazy consumer. There can be multiple ASINs or multiple, how often when we look up something, Kleenex 3-pack, we click on the first product link. We don't really we don't assume there's going to be choices. Like, well, Google is giving me this option. Amazon's giving me this option. This is the product. But oftentimes there are multiple options. We know that. Even multiple options under the same brand. They're all perfect. They're just multiple options. And instead of a consumer looking for a 12-pack, they'll just go to the 3-pack and add 4 to their cart. And so we just take advantage, of that arbitrage opportunity. And sometimes it's wild, the discrepancy, though, in price. Sometimes you can buy a 12-pack for $12 and the single unit will sell for $8. And that makes no sense. But that's just the reality. And you're like this, and you see the numbers, and you're like, before you click on it, you're like, no. And then you look in Keepa, and it's like, yeah, like that is selling for $8. And so, some of my favorite flips are like, usually I don't, most of the times I'll buy, I'll be like 3. It kind of is like something that's divisible by 3. Ends up being like a 3, a 6, 9, or a 12 for whatever reason. Sometimes 24 if it's like K-cups. But yeah, it'll be these packs, and you just break them down to singles, and you can be over 100% ROI on some of these deep bundles. And it can be 400% ROI. Sorry, my nose is like starting to clog. So it is wild, I think. And for right now, to kind of find some strategies, I've also done an extensive Twitter thread on exact strategies to use for debundles and like the keywords. But really what you're looking for is like for these bundles on Keepa or on Amazon, like what is a good product, like 12-pack, right? Like the word pack usually means that there's more than one and something that we can break down. Even the word bundle, set, things like that you can kind of synonymize with bundle. And then the research phase is like, all right, can I go find that somewhere in a smaller quantity? The trick that we have to do is just make sure that, again, the product that we're going to receive is something we can break down and still have individual manufactured sealed products. So you might sometimes I'll go on eBay and I'll look, or I'll go someplace where people have taken in-hand pictures of the bundle, and you can kind of like see how it looks like open. Sometimes Amazon will just you'll be able to see from the pictures. I really like baking goods, so spices or oils or things like that, where you buy like a case, you buy a 12 case, and they're going to be individually labeled because that's just how they come. There's no way around it. And some of those you'll find where, yeah, normally Amazon will sell them. Makes sense. It's a 12-pack of oil, and the bottle is $20. So normally it should be like a $250 product. And most of the time Amazon is $200, but they gradually are lowering the price, and you can buy it for $80. And so instead of now you're into each product for $6. So then you go back and you sell that $6 product for 20 or 25. And these can become replens, because not only may that big bundle always be at this lower price, or maybe they'll just gradually get lower over, every quarter they drop it for some reason. So we only get into like too weedy here, just for like it's been like an hour already. But like that's like the nature of debundles. That is it. It's the most time intensive model, but it can be one of the more rewarding models, and it does definitely lead to a pretty high turnover of refunds just because of the nature of it. And I know one of my great friends and my partner on Flip Alert, his name is Chad. He had a debundle play. I think he tweeted a picture of his It was like he spent like $7,000, made like 15,000. It was like just like a wild play that lasted for like 3 months. Like every time they came, like, it was just like, and it was just him and one other seller that were doing it. And the only reason he found it is because that other seller shared it with him, which again, the value of networks, because they couldn't afford, they didn't have enough cash to buy them out. So like, hey, Chad, help me buy this out. And then they obviously turned into a huge profit. So
that's awesome. So one of the, I guess if you want to call it this, one of the arguments against Amazon to Amazon flips is that, well, I can't use discount gift cards and I can't really get cash back. So what are some other methods, if any, to juice up the profits when doing Amazon to Amazon flips?
So you can't, I would agree. Gift cards are a no. So actually, shout out to Ryan, who's another like A2A seller and become a good friend recently. So gift cards, for a long time, there was this conversation around gift cards. Like, well, can I, should I, would I, could I? And always the concern with gift cards in my mind was it's harder to beat like a claim if you just use a gift card. But here actually, so I've always kind of stayed away from it and told people to avoid it. But recently I actually learned it's actually against TOS. Like using gift cards to buy for resale is like actually in their TOS. I don't know if it's always been there, but Ryan pointed out to me, so I'm happy. I've always said to avoid it. But yeah, gift cards like off the table. Cash back is a interesting area because you can, credit card cash back is a thing, and so we can definitely dive into that. And I kind of call it a gray area. I'm very TOS friendly as a human being in general, but specifically with Amazon. One of the things I do talk about is kind of the Amazon credit cards and how like I will talk about them. I don't usually say people should or shouldn't, but I'll talk about them. I've never seen an issue. But the reality is Amazon does have an Amazon credit card. They call it a Prime credit card. And the reason that it's kind of like feels gray is because using Prime benefits is against TOS. So in order to get this credit card, you have to have a Prime account. But where it turns into this weird area is that in the credit card language, there's something that actually says you can't, as far as ChatGPT has told me, and the reading I've done, and I uploaded it, and the people I've talked to who have been using this for years, there's nothing that says in there that specifically can't use this credit card for reselling. So they don't kind of spell that out, which is good for us. The interesting thing about that credit card is if you have a Prime personal account, you can actually go get that credit card, but then use it on any Amazon account, Prime or not, and get the benefits. So a lot of people will go get that credit card on their Prime account and then just use it on their A2A account and get 5% cash back on everything. And you can imagine how fast that loads up. I mean, it's like kind of wild. When you're talking about spending the amount of money we're talking about spending, like that alone will pay your mortgage. And so that is probably that's the most aggressive way of getting the highest cash back if you're comfortable doing it. There are two Prime credit cards. There's a business credit card and a personal credit card. The business one doesn't go on your credit report, but it's capped at $5,000 in cash back. Not great. The personal one has no cap, but of course you are going to be spending a lot of money on it. So you will take a hit to your credit unless you are churning really, really fast. But you can just rack up like, $5,000+ a month in cash back on that card if you're spending big. There's of course like other credit cards that do some decent Amazon stuff, but that's really the only way I can like say is like how you get points back or something back from Amazon. There are some ways to reduce your cost on Amazon themselves, like subscribe and save is within TOS for A2A flips. Like you want to subscribe and save, you can do that. You want to use coupons that pop up on the product pages, you can do that. You can't do flash deals, or I don't know what they call them, lightning deals.
Mm-hmm.
The actual lightning deal itself in TOS, it says you cannot resell a lightning deal. But they do other deals that they don't count as lightning deals. They just do like daily deals, or I don't know what the language, but like those aren't lightning deals. So like it's so semantics, but like technically those are fine. Lightning deals aren't. But those are the kind of things that you can do to kind of whittle down your cogs. But the only like true like cashback way I know of is through some kind of credit card, Amazon or otherwise.
Mhm. And one thing about the business Amazon Prime card, and I don't know if you mentioned this or not, but if you wanted to go that route so it doesn't hit your personal, that one offers like 90 days, same as cash on a lot of things, right?
Yeah, I think it's one of it might be one of the other one per like when you click checkout, I think you choose if you want cashback or extended.
Yeah.
I don't know, but yes, you can essentially extend your cycle on those. The problem is I think it's like Chase. I think you don't get the highest limits. One is Chase, and one is Amex. You don't get the highest limits on that one. It obviously depends on your relationship with Chase, but I've heard that like even if you have pretty high limits on other cards, that Prime one you get like oftentimes you get stuck in like the 10 to 15,000 range, which like
Hmm.
you can do that in a day on a good A2A day. So like not great unless you have the cash to pay it off fast.
Nice.
I want to stay in the risk management arena slash account safety. Um, Pretty much any seller that you talk to is going to be scared about getting suspended and account health issues. So I want to address that specifically. What's your experience, and how does A2A influence your account health if issues pop up?
It's interesting because someone just sent me a message this morning. I don't know who it is. I won't shout him up because I don't remember his name. There's some lawyer who makes TikToks um, or Instagram. And I say some with no like malice. It's just like I don't know who he is. But he made a video I think today or yesterday where he was like talking about A2A, and he was saying how Amazon won't accept their own invoices, their own stuff, and how you shouldn't do it. And what I was explaining to the person who sent that to me, I was like, well, I do think lawyers, number one, have to be careful what they say on the internet. They're not going to say like confidently anything. um, and number two, a lawyer biasly is just going to is arguably going to deal with people who have problems. Like they don't hear from the 90% who don't, right? It's kind of
Hmm.
like you don't go to the hospital unless you're sick. So of course doctors are going to think everyone's sick. Like they just naturally see more problems in their day to day. The reality is over the years, we've worked with hundreds and thousands of A2A sellers, and Amazon is like, and I hate to say this out loud because now they're gonna make me look like an idiot, but they like do a pretty good job responding to Amazon invoices. I do want to be pretty clear with how I say this though. When you're buying from Amazon.com, Amazon.com is the seller. Um, I'm pretty confident, right? Like I just kind of buy. I don't really think about the relationship I have with the seller in that regard. I do purchase from third party sellers. Third party sellers are all not the same. I think I need to be very clear here. Just because I purchase from third party sellers and I beat issues and others in our group have beat issues doesn't mean that I nilly-willy go buy from anyone with any name, with any rating. I think it's important that we still do research. And I kind of go into this too in some of my trainings to validate a third party seller um, because I still want to buy from a third party seller who is brand direct or a distributor or a wholesaler or a retailer who happens to be selling on Amazon. I like it when they're like a bigger seller who has a track record of success. I'm probably not buying from Jimmy down the street who is going for garage sales and flipping stuff new on Amazon. And then when products come in, I'm also doing my diligence and reviewing them before I sell them. That being said, I've gotten every complaint possible over the years, from IP to counterfeit to used sold as new. I've beaten them all with A2A. I've been Section 3'd. I've beaten that with an A2A. Almost half, if not more than half, when there was that huge Section 3 problem last year, it was like, I feel like it was at least 50% of the buy box, our group got Section 3'd. It was just kind of like, like it was kind of a rite of passage, right, to be an Amazon seller at the time. And vast majority of them used A2A invoices. Amazon has gone as far as to include, which I love that they do this, and it feels like magic every time. I don't know why it's only on some and not others, but certain complaints when they come in, when you go to click appeal, they'll actually have a section that will say, did you buy this from Amazon? Give us your order number, which is just like so amazing to me. Like you just give them your order number and your account, like your order number and your account, and they will potentially sometimes clear it just off that, which is wild that they ever added that, and it still is there. We just had someone a couple weeks ago that used that, and they'll get it cleared within an hour of just giving them like their Amazon order number. Otherwise, yeah, we just provide receipts. And, I think that you're still going to come across areas where like, hey, I gave them my Amazon receipt and they rejected me. That means that it's never going to work and that you're lying. The reality is, like, Amazon's Amazon. They're going to reject you sometimes for no matter what that you do. And you guys know this better than me, and you've had whole talks about this, right? Like, Amazon's just Amazon sometimes. And so I want to sit here and say, we have beat every complaint. We have beat Section 3s, many Section 3s, all with Amazon. I've done my Section 3 interview, explained to the interview person where I buy my products from, right? Explained everything, still got cleared. But you will just have some bad reps sometimes, and you just have to reapply, and that's just the reality of it. But I don't believe Amazon is any riskier than anything else. I actually think it's safer in some ways than some traditional models, especially if you're buying, like, depending on where you're sourcing OA and RA from. I think A2A can be safer, and I might get some heat for that, but I mean, that's just like Amazon's come out and said they're kind of okay with it. So, like, as long as they're going to keep using language that is very obvious, that even they're invoicing for, if you can get ungated, if you somehow, pray to the gods of ungating, and that works for you. I mean, even their language on ungating says, hey, are you using an Amazon invoice? So, like, they know it's happening. They're not, that's all new too. That didn't exist 6, 7 years ago. This is all new language. So they're coming around faster than I expected.
Yeah,
it's
solid.
A surprising level of self-awareness.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense too. People always complain, like, oh, why do they want 100 if it's A2A and only 10 of it's not? Like, well, they want you to spend money with them. Like, of course they want to. If I was them, I would do it too. Like, listen, if you're going to use me to get ungated, you better spend lots of money.
Right.
It's kind of what they do.
Yeah.
So one of the questions that I hear quite frequently is, if I'm going to do Amazon to Amazon flips, should I use a personal account? Should I use a business account? Should I have one of both? Like, what's the strategy here? And are there any risks using a business account or a personal account?
So there's no inherent risks just by using the account. Your biggest risk is going to be breaking TOS. The easiest way to do that is to use Prime. So you're just, I always recommend one of both, one personal account, one business account. And I want to be very clear when I say personal account, because there was some confusion recently. A personal account to me is just a non-business account. Doesn't mean it's your personal account. It's not like you're personally using it to shop for your home. It just means it's a non-business account. So if you are listening to this and you're like, well, I already have a personal account, you probably do. You probably have a Prime account that you use to buy toilet paper for your house. Keep that. Open a second account that's non-business, and then open a third business. So you're going to have essentially 3 accounts at that point. Your 2 ones that you're going to use for A2A are going to be non-Prime. Otherwise, it should be all your information: your real name, your real business, your real address. You do want to use a different email. So I recommend not using your Seller Central email in any of these accounts. And again, that's not because of against TOS. That's just because how Amazon handles their back-end infrastructure. We just don't want to add any insult to injury down the line if something were to occur, because they all end up getting linked. So otherwise, the reason for the 2 accounts is value for each one. So a business account has some value. Sometimes products will have specific business discounts, which we will show you in Flip Alert. Little ping there. If a product has a business discount, we'll tell you. But number 2, sometimes there's quantity differences. Sometimes on a personal account, you can buy 3. Business discount, you can buy 9. Great, you can buy more of it. What we don't recommend is using both accounts to buy the same product. So, like, getting around quantity limits using multiple accounts, that's a no. So just pick one, buy out what you can, and then move on. The reason, though, that I am a sucker for personal accounts, and I always try to explain this correctly, because I think you can hear this and be like, oh, it's because you're worried. I'm not worried about A2A. A2A is not the reason that any of these accounts are going to be suspended. Just like, as long as you follow what I just said, you're not going to be suspended because you bought from Amazon and sold on Amazon. You will get suspended if you over return. So you buy a bunch from Amazon, you return a lot on Amazon. Amazon does not like returns. Why should they, right? You're taking advantage of their returns. Even if you're a consumer, they don't like returns. For whatever reason, business accounts, and I wish I knew the answer why, they're just more susceptible to suspension. you've had many people on this podcast have had their business account suspended. It's just the reality. Like, even if you use it not for A2A, just as a normal business, like people just get them suspended, and Amazon will not tell you why. And it doesn't affect your seller account. It doesn't affect your other buying accounts. They're just like, hey, you can't use this account for business purchasing anymore, which is not really a big deal normally. But if you are using it for a lot of A2A, the problem happens when you lose access to all your invoices, because you suddenly can't get all those invoices to then be able to argue with Amazon in the future if something happens. So if you're going to use a business account, I always recommend downloading your invoices. You can bulk download them through a business account, which is pretty cool. But download them like once a week. Just save them somewhere. Super simple. But that's why I tend to use a personal account 99% of my buys, and then I use a business account only when business has an advantage. So only when it's a cheaper discount, only when there's more quantity, I'll use business. Otherwise, I'm buying personal. Personal is so hard to get suspended. I never see someone get their personal suspended unless they are actively doing a high level of returns, or Amazon has deemed that they like are not allowed to have any Amazon account, and they're like trying to circumvent against some kind of ban that's happened, like for botting. People bought Amazon. I was like, stop botting Amazon. Like, yeah, you can do it, but like, if you get banned for botting, they will link your accounts. So like, that's really how I see personals. Business just can get randomly banned. So that's usually my recommendation, is just like download your invoices, only use it when it makes sense. And don't share emails, because if you do happen to have the same email on your business account as your seller central account, and your business account gets suspended, it can actually suspend your seller account. Not because you did anything wrong as a seller, but because your login gets suspended. And it'll suspend your AWS account. It'll suspend all of your Amazon logins attached to that email. So just like have a separate email address. That's just the cleanest.
Yeah. Let's talk about cash flow a little bit, because there's one aspect of purchasing on Amazon that's a little bit different than OA sellers are used to. Amazon doesn't charge until they ship the product.
Correct.
So I imagine that could add a wrinkle to cash flow. So how do you account for that? Maybe tracking pending orders and all in
Yep.
the effort to not overextend yourself.
Yeah, so I think what you'll need regardless, I think regardless of how you're sourcing, you need to have a buy sheet, right? And you guys have talked about this in the past. Buy sheets are valuable for lots of reasons. One of the biggest reasons for A2A though is this, right? Like, I can easily see how much I spent. I can see all of those other things. And so if you're already doing a buy sheet, you should have a pretty good idea of how much, at least general idea of how much spend you have out there floating in the world. Um, but what I talked about earlier around Amazon's order kind of history and order stuff being really confusing, this is one of the major reasons. If you only have $30,000 in a credit card that you can spend, it's very easy to overspend on A2A, because you log in and you're like, look at my, it says I have $8,000 remaining in my balance I can spend, but you have $25,000 in pending Amazon to Amazon that hasn't shipped yet. And that's nowhere. That's the only place that would possibly be is in your buy sheet. And that's if you record really, really well when things shipped and all that. So that's another plug for Flip Alert. I mean, that's what we built for Flip Alert. I will say this part is free though. So even if you don't pay me any money, we actually made this free because it's such a problem. I was like, no A2A seller should have to deal with this. So we have a Chrome extension for Flip Alert, and all we do is we'll just pull in all your orders for you into one module that you can, of course, like filter, but we'll also show you every status of every order: delivered, outstanding, shipped, canceled. We'll flag orders for you. So maybe it shipped, but it never got delivered. We'll be like, hey, man, you should probably open a ticket or talk to support, because that's pretty common too. Amazon will ship something and it gets lost, and they're not going to tell you. And so we'll just have like this. We'll have like, we allow you to set a budget per month, and we'll have like a little circle and be like, hey, you've spent X dollars, and we'll tell you when you're like your outstanding is more. So like, hey, you have $40,000 outstanding, but your budget was only 30. And so that's how I use it now. Like that is what I use, I should say, to track that. But and I said that is free, so you get it with the paid, but you also get it just by downloading the Chrome extension. You can go to flipalert.co and download the Chrome extension there, and then just log in and start using it. It's super, super simple. If you don't want to do that though, then you need to have a buy sheet. You need to have something where you're tracking every single order, when it was delivered, and then have some way of, calibrating what might still be pending, because it is the worst thing when you have this amazing buy that you bought, that then all of a sudden you get an email and says, your card was declined and the order was canceled. And that's because you didn't realize that you didn't have enough on that card. Unfortunately, Amazon will often give you a little bit of a window uh, to kind of change but I've had it where when you go to try to change your credit card, it cancels the order, or like something weird happens and you just don't want to risk that. Like you just want to make sure that every order you place is just going to go through fine. I will also say if you have too many, this is actually something relatively new that we saw last year. So many people were using privacy cards or like cards that only had a small amount of funds to hold their order to like, oh, I'll buy it today. Amazon will tell me when the credit card gets declined, and then I'll decide if I want to keep it because they wanted to see how Amazon reacted to like the market. Amazon started suspending accounts that had too many credit card whatever faults or declines. So like it is important also to kind of stay on top of that.
That makes sense. I would imagine that a credit card decline still costs them money in some way.
Yeah, if nothing else in time, it costs them the inventory. Like they're holding
Yeah.
inventory for so long.
Yeah. You've got this concept of a 3-to-1 risk ratio. Can you kind of explain that concept and maybe even give us like an example of how you apply that in your business?
Yeah, I wish I had like a really cool. Well, all right, I have this probably this probably too. This is not an 8-to-8 flip, but we'll use this as our example. So I use risk ratios pretty routinely. 3-to-1 is like my main one. 5-to-1 sometimes is a more aggressive one, and then sometimes I don't. Right, it kind of depends. But when we talked about those quick buys, I'd make a 10-second decision like quick purchase. In those situations, I feel confident enough to make that buying decision that I'm going to profit. Like I see something in the keep it chart. I see something where I'm like, I'm going to buy this. I'm not worried about making money. I know I'm at that point in time with all the information I have, I feel good that I'm going to profit. But that's not always the case. And so some of the more intricate keep it charts, or some of the more interesting ones, some of the more profitable ones, it's not as obvious, right? We kind of have to take risk. We have to take conservative efforts. We have to look at the market. We have to, all right, is this going to be a good buy? I think it will, but like why? And in those cases, I use ratios. And my 3-to-1 risk ratio essentially is this. If I buy something, so I have this PlayStation Backbone, right? This was a Target clearance buy. I think I bought it for myself. $70. I wanted to game in bed with some PS5, but I bought it for $70. Let's say I looked, and let's say this was an 8-to-8 flip at $70, and I looked on Amazon. I could buy it today for 70, and Amazon had a history of like sometimes getting up to like $200. Like occasionally, this product hit 200 and sold, but they also had a clear history of like kind of being stuck at 70, and they're and this is for a PS5, and maybe PS6 was close. Maybe there was something else that was like the market I was unsure of. Like, will this product be at 70? Will this product be at 200? I wasn't confident that I knew what was going to happen in the next 3 months. So what I'll do is a ratio. I'll say, okay, I'm going to buy this product for $70. If I have to sell this product at $70, so I'm essentially have to sell it back at my buy cost, because to me, I'm pretty confident I can at least sell it for what I paid. I'm buying at the bottom. Worst case, I'll sell it at the bottom. How much money would I lose? So if I sell it at 70, maybe I lose $20 between fees and shipping. It's a $20 loss for everyone I buy. And then I look, all right, what is the best case scenario realistically? And that was 200. What would I make if I sold at 200? And the math said, all right, at 200, you're going to make $100, or you're going to make $90. You bought for 70, you sell for 200, you make 90. There's $40 in fees. Well, what is the ratio between my negative potential loss and my potential profit? In this case, it's a potential negative 20, potential positive 90. So we're talking about 4.5, right? A 4.5 multiplier. That's above my 3-to-1. So when I look at my 3-to-1, I'm saying, all right, I need to make at least 3 times my potential profit versus my potential loss for this to make sense for me to take this risk. And in that case, it would work. I'd be like, okay, this makes sense. I think that there is definitely a world where it gets to 200. I just can't see the future. I'm not taking like, again, these are not for buys where you're hoping. I'm not like just pure hold on to my seat, pray. I have enough data to suggest that 200 is very reasonable, but I also have enough data to say, maybe not. So that's where this comes in. If I'm even more unsure, I'll go to 5-to-1. Like, oh, no, this needs to be 5-to-1 for me to say yes to this. And that's how I use our ratio. The way the ratio helps me is I don't have to win every time. So if I use my ratio and I buy 3 different products, and every one met that ratio, I just need to win 2 out of 3 times for me to then make money. And that's also the game of arbitrage in general. It's the game of Amazon. We talked about like how to unteach some stuff. People you like when people are sourcing, you're not going to win every time. I mean, you guys, I'm sure talk about that. And even in any model, you can't win every time. It's impossible. I sell things for a loss all the time. I just need to win more than I lose. And for me, I want to win at least 70%. And so 3-1 kind of gets me there. And so this has allowed me substantial growth because not only am I making oftentimes great money because these buys, I almost have no competition because people don't want to take that risk. But I also learn a whole lot. I learn a lot about that product, learn a lot about that brand, I learn a lot about that keep it chart. And it's kind of like stocks. Like there's a level of like history repeats itself. I see enough charts, you kind of start seeing patterns. And so then eventually the chart where I originally was doing a 3-to-1 ratio is no longer a 3-to-1 ratio. Now it's like, okay, actually, I've seen this play out enough times. I feel pretty good about this. I'm not worried. And then that 3-to-1 kind of moves to something else that's riskier and so on. So that's my ratio report, and that's how I use it.
Interesting. So, all right, the thing I pulled out of there is you have multiple businesses. You're doing this much in A to A, and you have time to game in bed. You're making me have to reevaluate my life.
Well, you just gotta do everything for your phone. It opens up a whole.
Right. Hey, so let's. The key thing, the interesting thing with the keep a chart is we don't know what happens to the left. You know, A to A, it's interesting because a little less anxiety because you're expecting how it plays out. You know, the arbitrager needs things to be as close to the left of what they're looking at as possible. So let's flip that into some predictions of the future. Where do you see what does the left of the chart look like for A to A future?
Someone actually recently DM'd me on Twitter about this. I get a lot of questions regarding A2A and AI and OA and AI and like the future of arbitrage in general. And I know you guys have talked about this, and my answer is it's probably very much aligned with what you guys have said. And I don't think A2A is any different. I actually think it's interesting. There is 2 parts of my brain, right? So we've seen in the last 24 months in particular, really since 2020, we've seen a lot of retail close. Really, we've seen a lot of stores go bankrupt. A lot of places that we loved when we were younger no longer exist. And there's some places that there's some new stores that pop up and take their place, but nothing. We're kind of, I think, past the renaissance of like the true big box, right? The big box is dying. And there's two opinions I have of that. Number one, it gives Amazon more leverage, right? More buyers, more sellers, more opportunity for new products are going to be on OA. They're going to be the more products that end up on the platform, arguably the more arbitrage opportunity for A2A, right? It's just a bigger net. The other side is less competition means less opportunity for Amazon to have to price down to force the consumer to look at them. So I think that A2A in my mind is like, as long as Amazon exists, I think there will always be opportunity to arbitrage it. Like there will never be a time where everything on Amazon is priced exactly as it should be, and there's like no wiggle room for buying it and reselling it. I don't know though yet how I feel if it's going to expand or decrease. I don't think that we're ever going to decrease to the point where it's not viable. I do think that it could certainly expand in the short term while some of these places are closing down, but Amazon doesn't have yet like more market share. Like they have market share, they have the majority, but they're not. I don't know. I don't feel like they're jumping 10% in the next few years in market share. And I do think that we're going to have, Walmart is trying. I think there's going to be something else. I don't know if you guys remember jet.com. But like, I think there will be other companies that come out and try to compete in the space. That's just going to help. I don't think HOA is particularly in trouble. I think the tariff situation and like the political and economical stuff around the world actually has more of an impact than anything as prices rise everywhere. As it gets more expensive to cross border, that has more of an interesting effect in my mind of how we see products and the scope of markdowns and the scope of clearance. Because really part of A2A also is the overspending on the retailer's part on products. The better retailers get at predicting cycles, the less overstock they have. The less overstock they have, the less times they have to mark down. So like I think that sometimes that is more of an impact here. Like, are retailers going to get better at that? Is manufacturing going to change? Is China's still going to be the powerhouse, but like, are we going to see other places like other countries in Asia or even part of the US or North America start to develop to be bigger manufacturing hubs, in which case you won't need to buy as much. These companies won't need to be as ahead in their projections. That will hurt clearance across the board everywhere. So those are like the more interesting things. I don't think 2-3 years I'm worried about. I have no, as long as I'm able to source, I'm going to source, and it's probably going to be A2A. And I have all these other businesses. I'm 32 years old. I've always tried to be work optional by 40. That's kind of been my goal. But work optional to me doesn't mean stop working. I don't anticipate like Amazon not being on my to-do list for years. I think it's fun. Like, it's fun. It pays, like it pays my bill. It pays my mortgage. Like it can pay all that. I don't need it to be a $10-20 million company. Like, I don't need Amazon to be that for me. So in my mind, A2A is here to stay because I'm going to keep doing it. But those other things I mentioned that's where I'm going to be more focused on. And I think that's more like a 5-year, like, all right, let's have the conversation in 2030 and see like how things have played out with retail, how things have played out with manufacturing, how things have played out economically with, the changes in who's in the White House. That kind of stuff is more impactful with how Amazon handles arbitrage.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think people maybe overestimate, at least today, what AI is going to do for inefficiencies in the marketplace over the next 2 or
I'm not
3 years.
worried.
Like, that's such a Amazon. We're seeing this with Amazon right now. They're they've been working on a flywheel model of distribution, and they're like, oh, it's going to get better, it's going to get faster. But we've seen FC transfer times just be insane right now. Like, it's such a big problem at scale that I'm not even sure that AI is going to be able to figure that out for us immediately.
And AI is like, it's a different conversation, but it's just not mass. The mass population is not taken to it. Not that they don't want to. It's just honestly still kind of confusing. Just even the different models, the fact like even ChatGPT, as simple as it is confusing for a lot of folks. So I don't think it's going to enter the mainstream sphere of how consumers purchase quite as aggressively as people think in the near future. I think it will. Let's talk about this in 10 years or 5 years. But even then, I'm not. I don't know. Maybe I'm naive and ignorant. I love AI for a lot of ways, but I just don't see it shifting that fast. And if it does shift something is broke. Something gets fixed over here, something breaks over there. Right? I think every change opens up opportunity that we're not seeing yet of what that's going to look like.
All right, let's. So you've talked about A2A shouldn't be someone's only model, but there are a lot of people who are going to listen to this. They're doing OA, they're doing RA, or maybe they're doing wholesale, and they want to add some A2A to their business. What would be the easiest thing for someone to do to be able to take some action this week and add A2A to their business?
I think they need to plug. They need to go either review one of our other calls, or they can go ahead to my Twitter. I think they're already paying for it. I think that's usually the easiest and best way in to at least understand the concept of A2A, because Keepa is going to be your front door to the Amazon internet. Keepa deals and Keepa product finder. Just follow my step-by-step on my Twitter pinned. I spent over $1.5 million just doing Keepa deals. And I also don't like selling people software, right, Flipboard in this case, until they understand the problem that I'm solving for them. And I think it's hard to understand the problem until you've experienced it. And I think Keepa isn't going to give you a problem, but you're gonna use it. You're gonna buy some stuff. You're gonna have some wins, and you'll be like, okay, now I understand how this can be made more efficient. I understand how I can spend a lot more money if this was slightly different. And I understand the value, and then I want you to come talk to me, or come join Flip Alert if you want to take it to like that next, like you want to start spending $5,000 a month, like we can do that. I think it's just going to get you there so much faster, but I think you got to start with Keepa. Unless, some folks listening to this, I've had people who've never done A2A who I have this conversation with, and they buy a year of Flip Alert. I think like if you want to go all in, like by all means, like I will, I will not stop you. We have a free trial. We have training videos. Like, you want to just hit the ground running and you want the best, want the deals day one. You don't have to sift, like, by all means. But if you're kind of already doing stuff and you don't want to spend more money, I respect you. I respect that. I think Keepa is a great first step to understanding this environment, and what an HOA deal even looks like and how it can be perceived. And then kind of like binge some of my tweets if you want. There's a lot. I try to put as much as I can in tweet form, to help you see the different strategies and angles and models.
Yeah, the certainly no complaints as far as the massive level of support that you provide. So if somebody did choose to go all in, certainly help them along the way. So Chris, is it time for lightning round?
Happy to.
Yeah, it is. So we always do a little bit of a lightning round. If you had a billboard that every aspiring entrepreneur, Amazon seller, flipper could read, what would it say?
So those listening to this, there are some show notes that exist and they're reading from, and I had access about 5 minutes before we call, and I saw this question. I shook my head then. I'm shaking my head now because, my God, do I not know. It's like probably the hardest question you've asked this last hour and a half, because I have so many things that I want to say, and none of them really like read so beautifully on a billboard. I think that entrepreneurialism, I don't think it's one size fits all. So I think it's a hard. I do often think people overthink, which is not like some big thing that is coming, from me, that, oh my God, it's all so wise. But even in the Amazon world, I see like people overanalyze and overcomplicate the crap out of everything. And like, done is better than perfect, and just do it. Especially in I want to say, like, in the Amazon space, it's quite cheap to start compared to like a lot of other businesses. So, if you're going to try something like this, understand that you're going to lose some money potentially, but it's all in the name of learning and education. And it doesn't do you any good to just like keep reading and keep sitting on the sidelines. So, that's usually my thing. Is like, kind of don't overthink and like just fail, man. Like, I've hired dozens and dozens of people in my life, for different kinds of positions. And the thing that I always tell them is like, I want them to fail. And they always look at me like I'm crazy. Like, I don't want you to like fail as an employee, and I don't want you to fail as a human, but I want you to take enough risks where you make mistakes. Um, because there's very few mistakes that we can't fix. And I think the people that take those chances and try those things are the ones that learn so much faster, um, especially if you understand where you went wrong or what you did to get there. You gotta kind of have to do a postmortem on your decisions. But that's why. I mean, I see people on Twitter. I see folks. They're doing great. Like, they're doing great. It's a great business. They're doing, like, they have $1 million business, but they're trying to solve problems that I have never even thought of with our $7 million business. Um, and and I think that that's really, I think that some of that is like, maybe I should be thinking about some of things, but I also think that sometimes our brains are so programmed to like be problem solution oriented that we just create problems. There's a really good book and I can't think of it, but the whole thing was essentially on that. It's like, we, especially, not to be like, especially men, it's not a sexist thing, I'm sure, but like, scientifically they found like men's brains in particular, like, we will go and create our own problems just to solve them. And I think that's like oftentimes what I see people do. I'm like, it's easy to do, but like, you got to try to stop doing that. Just like, fail forward as often as possible. I think it's how I've gotten here in life. Just fall forward.
It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy if you overthink the question and then your advice is about overthinking, right?
Yeah, like, systematize and automate. Like, oh my God, like, sometimes you like spend 5 hours automating a 15-minute problem. Like,
Yeah.
man.
Well, hey, no judgment here. Done is better than perfect, I think, was the title of our first podcast episode 90 episodes ago. So we're certainly on board with that one.
Yeah.
So the next question, and you can't say backbone. What's the best personal or business purchase under $500 that you've made in the last half year?
Well, not a new chair, because I'm getting a new chair. It squeaks. I've heard comments. Although maybe it's a signature now. The best personal or business purchase under 500. Actually, I don't buy anything for myself much. other than like this hat. I'm gonna have such a boring answer. I'm gonna have the most boring answer in the world. I bought. People are gonna tune out as soon as I wear glasses, and I've been wearing glasses since I was like. I mean, I technically got glasses at 13, but I didn't really start wearing them until I was like 19 or 20. But I went to a new eye doctor, and they had this new technology which I had never seen before. You guys actually maybe have experienced if you wear glasses. I don't know, which is really cool. Where like I essentially did VR. You know, like instead of like I did like a normal eye test, but they also put me in VR, and they had a whole VR game that tested my like depth and like a whole bunch of cool stuff that like measured my eyes in a way that like were wild. And the guy explained to me that yes, my current glasses were functional as far as like 2020, right? Like they were like fixing my stigmatism, but there's a separate problem where my eyes didn't meet at 20 feet. They were meeting at like 60 feet. And so things were clear, but enough blur, like just enough subtleness where I was getting headaches, but you don't realize that's why because nothing looks blurry. So there was this whole thing, and he showed me. So anyway, I got new glasses. I got like these like they're like lenses that are supposed to stop that. Like I don't know some company, but they definitely worked. My headaches like went away, and that was it was $485. So that was
Interesting.
my best purchase under 500.
Interesting. What's a book that you've read or a podcast that you've listened to or even a YouTube video that you've watched that's had a profound impact on either you or your business in the last 3 months?
So I wrote a book in the notes here, which I haven't finished, so I don't know if it's cheating because I don't want you to ask me any questions because I can't give you good answers yet. But it's called and a lot of your listeners have probably read it, The Inner Game of Tennis: The Classic Guide to the Mental Side of Peak Performance. And I didn't. I think it came up. I'm pretty sure it actually came up in a My First Million podcast is where I originally heard.
Nice.
Um,
Yep.
because I don't think it's obviously they talk about sports, but it alludes to a lot of the mental aspect of sports, which really translate well into business. And I think the forward, and they've done multiples of these books. I think the forward is usually written by some business professional, and so that one I think is interesting. I've been tending to read recently more books that are opening my brain mentally to balance in life and the health side of being a human, versus just like the hardcore grind type work till you're tired, sleep 3 hours a night kind of books, which don't really align with who I am. So some of them, this one is actually more business oriented than most. Oftentimes they're more like I would say spiritual, but not in a religious way, just like spiritual and like a soul kind of way, or yeah, just kind of like mental health aspect. And then like I do like podcasts. I mean, My First Million is probably my main business podcast I listen to. But and then I do try to read like fiction books. I'm reading. I'd be people can judge me for this. I tend to find myself reading a lot of young adult fiction because they're just easy and fun reads. Like they're like designed for like 16, 17-year-olds or whatever. Or like, but like I think the things in them, even 30s, are core. Like the coreness of what they teach you is good. And I think I learn different things now than I would have if I had read it in my teens. And the one I'm reading, I wish I could remember the name. It's a book about this guy who inherits his uncle's business, but his uncle is a supervillain. And so he inherits a supervillain, but he's not really a supervillain. And the whole book, his minions are talking cats. So it's it's very interesting,
Oh,
and
that's John Scalzi, right?
maybe I'm really not good with authors. It was one of those. I go to Barnes and Noble, and they always have those racks of the books that they cover in paper, so you can't see what's in them, and they just kind of write some like eluded word of mystery on them, like it's a mystery book. And so I try to buy one of those every now and then, and that's what this was. And I'm like, well, listen, it was fate, so I'm going to read it. And I like those kind of books. I think they let my brain relax and it lets me think about things, but also at the same time, like this guy is facing real life business problems, running up, and so like, yeah, it's maybe not one-to-one translatable, but like there are things that are like, oh yeah, like he has to hire people and he has to like enter, politics of like coming into a business that someone else has already started running and management and like all these things that like I have to deal with, and that's really interesting. And so yeah, my book choices may be a little bit odd, but
No, that's
they're
good.
fun.
That's Starter Villain by John Scalzi, and that's been recommended to me a couple times actually.
Well, there you go.
People are going to want to follow you. They're going to want to learn more about you. They're going to want to take in your content. Where is the best place to find you?
We've talked about it a few times. My number one social media platform is Twitter, like it or not, and that is at Saul Sells, or Saul Sells Stuff. I don't even remember. I think it's Saul Sells Stuff. But if you type in Saul Sells, I'm sure it'll find me. Uh, I'm dabbling on Instagram. I think Instagram is Saul Sells. I don't think the stuff is there on Instagram. Um, I really just kind of repost from Twitter to Instagram because I don't really understand Instagram.
Mhm.
I would like to understand it because I think there's a whole new audience of people I can help there, but I haven't really figured out that whole thing. And then I've recently committed to doing at least one TikTok live. I went on TikTok live the other day, and which I never do, but someone linked me, and there were a handful of Amazon sellers just doing like random kind of lives. Um, and it invigorated me to maybe for some reason I went on Twitter. I originally joined Twitter because I wanted to be I was like you can't be annoyed with something and then not decide to make a change. If you have the power to make a change, you got to make a change.
Mhm.
And there were, at Twitter at the time, there were just some things on Twitter that I didn't agree with. I didn't think were true. Um, and so I was like, well, listen, I'm not going to go and argue with people on Twitter. I'm not going to like call people liars. But what I can do is I can go on Twitter and start saying things that I think are true for my account and maybe give people a different perspective of what running a business can be like. And I feel like TikTok is that now. So I may have to end up on doing some TikTok lives and tell people that 50% margins are not common, and you can't retire on 200,000 in revenue, and all the things that I've seen recently on TikTok Live.
Yeah. Now I will also say, of course, go give Saul a follow. But when this comes out, or when you're watching this, it's very likely that there is an Amazon to Amazon Flips challenge that is right around the corner. And so, if you want to master Amazon Flips like Saul, I would highly suggest that you check it out. There's going to be a link down in the show notes, along with a link to Saul's social media. So give him a follow. Check out the Amazon to Amazon Flips Challenge, where you get to pick his brain for hours on end, and kind of dive deep into all the different ways to make money with Amazon to Amazon Flips. Now, before we go, we always end with a quote of the week, and this one comes from Jeff Bezos. It says, "I knew that if I failed, I wouldn't regret that, but I knew the one thing I might regret is not trying." And the reason I brought this quote up is I actually read this about the end of June. I've been having that quote saved since about the end of June, and July is when I finally said it's time to take the leap and try Amazon to Amazon Flips. I understand the mechanics, I understand the science. I couldn't really get the art of it. And I'm glad I did, because it's opened up a whole new sourcing stream for me. So if you need the push, hopefully that quote from Jeff is that push. It's very likely that if you don't try, you will end up regretting it more than maybe even losing a few bucks on a bad flip here or there. Um, Saul, as always, this was fantastic. Thank you, man.
Yeah, thank you guys. It's a pleasure. And I don't know if this is the time to say it, but I do want to say, like, if anyone is listening to this and kind of interested in the A2A challenge or what it's about, this is our second one. I do want to just kind of call out, like, you aren't the guinea pig here. We did one last May. We had hundreds of folks who I think loved it. I only heard good things. If they said
Mhm.
bad things, Chris hid it from me, but I don't think we got any. And I was live for 15 hours. And this year, we're going to change it up a little bit. You're going to get a lot of hours with me live. But you're also going to get a lot more recorded content too, which I think is going to be really helpful. So you can really digest it and really cater to the learning styles, the different types of learning styles. So if you're really into record, you're really into lives, you're also going to get Flip Alert, and you're going to get a whole bunch of like tools and tips and tricks that have changed over the last 18 months since
Mhm.
I've been the last one. But it was a really good time, and some of my favorite success posts and people now that are in football actually came out of that challenge last year. So
Nice.
it's cool to see that.
Yeah, it is. All right. Well, thanks again, man. All right, guys, that's the pod. We'll check in the next one. Thanks for listening to Clear the Shelf with Chris and Chris. If you enjoyed this episode, please take a screenshot on your phone and share it to Facebook, Instagram, or your favorite FBA group, and be sure to tag me and let me know why you liked it and what you'd like to hear more from us in the future. Also, I'd like to give you some free gifts for listening. Head over to rabbittrailchallenge.com and repricerchallenge.com for some free courses to further your business. Thanks for listening.